Poker's not just cards and chips. It's rivalries, war stories, grudges and vendettas that have played out on live TV, in backrooms, and across Twitter feeds for over 20 years. But which feuds nearly turned violent? Which ones cost millions? And which rivalries are still unresolved to this day? Let's break down the greatest grudges ever dealt in poker. Negrronu versus Doug Pulk. In poker, trash talk is part of the game. But Daniel Negrronu and Doug Pulk took it to another level, a feud so bitter, so public, that it couldn't be resolved with tweets alone. It started back in 2014. Doug Pulk was a rising star, a heads-up specialist with a massive online following. Daniel Negrronu, on the other hand, was already a legend, a 6-time bracelet winner, beloved ambassador, and the face of poker stars. But when Negrronu casually claimed that he could beat high-stakes online poker with just a few weeks of practice, Pulk took it personally. Very personally. He saw it as arrogance, a slap in the face to the online grinders who lived and breathed the game. So he did what any internet-era pro would do. He turned Negrronu into a punchline. Doug mocked him on YouTube, roasted his strategies, even showed up to events wearing shirts that said, "More rake is better," a jab at one of Negrronu's most infamous quotes during his time defending poker stars. The feud dragged on for over 6 years. Snarky tweets, mock interviews, petty jabs. But eventually, the poker world got what it wanted, a real grudge match.
He's gonna get fucking destroyed. It's not even gonna be close.
The poker community this year, they all want to see this. Everyone's been saying, I'd love to see them play heads up.
In late 2020, they agreed to play 25,000 hands of heads up no limit hold'em, online, tracked publicly, with hundreds of thousands in side bets and the whole poker community watching. It wasn't close. Doug Pulk demolished Negrronu hand after hand, session after session. By the end, Pulk had profited over $1.2 million and proved exactly what he said all along. Online specialists would crush live pros who didn't put in the work. And to his credit, Negrronu took the loss with grace. He gave Pulk credit. They shook hands. The feud, at least publicly, was squashed. But that didn't erase the years of animosity, and it didn't stop fans from arguing over who really came out on top, the guy who won the match or the guy who showed up in the first place. Either way, it was one of the most personal and public grudge matches poker has ever seen, and as Doug Pulk walked away with over $1 million, Negrronu walked straight into his next long-term rivalry, one that had been simmering for over a decade. Phil Helmouth versus Tom Dwan. Phil Helmouth has faced a lot of players over the years, but few ever got under his skin like Tom Dwan. It all started in 2008 at the NBC Heads Up Championship. Helmouth, already a poker icon with 11 bracelets at the time, was up against a 22-year-old online prodigy, Tom Dwan, the kind of kid Helmouth loved to mock. Aggressive, reckless, no respect for the old guard. Helmouth had pocket aces, Dwan had pocket tens. All the money went in pre-flop, and Dwan cracked him. 10 on the flop, game over. But the real drama started after the hand. Helmouth stood up and gave one of his classic meltdowns. "You're gonna go broke, kid. You don't even understand how to play this game." Dwan didn't flinch. He looked right at him and said, "That's why you lose, Phil. You berate people and act like a child." Then he hit him with the coldest line of the night. "Pick your stakes, heads up, anytime." And just like that, a feud was born. For over a decade, that challenge hung in the air. Dwan became a high-stakes legend, playing nosebleed games in Macau and building a cult following online. Helmouth kept collecting bracelets and TV appearances, but they never squared off until PokerGo's high-stakes duel. In 2021, they finally sat down. Phil was on a 7-match win streak. Dwan ended it. The win was clinical, and it snapped Helmouth's momentum in front of a massive audience. But he didn't stay down long. In their rematch, 6 months later, Helmouth got his revenge. 1 win apiece. No rubber match. Not yet. But in poker, some rivalries don't need resolution. They just need the right stage. And in this case, the stage was perfect. Old school versus new school, emotion versus logic, and a 2-outer on national television that will live forever. Matt Berky versus Nick Airball. This wasn't a rivalry built on tournament history or televised meltdowns. This was pure internet-era ego, loud, public, and personal. Matt Berky is a longtime poker pro, respected, analytical, the kind of guy who runs a training site, coaches high-stakes players, and spends more time breaking down solver theory than talking trash. Nick Airball is the exact opposite. A brash high-stakes gambler with a sharp tongue and zero filter, Nick made a name for himself on Hustler Casino Live. bluffing big, talking bigger, and treating the table like his personal roast session. And for whatever reason, he had it out for Berky. In 2023, Nick went on Doug Polk's podcast and called Berky a scammer. No specifics, just full volume accusations. Said he was overhyped, said his training company was garbage, said he'd love to play him heads up. Berky accepted the challenge.
Well, I don't really care. Like, Berky's a scammer, that's the truth. Like, people may think that's like unfair to say, but like when you run a training site and you can't beat the games, like you're a scammer. Like,
and what followed was one of the most lopsided grudge matches poker's seen in years. They played in Las Vegas, 9 sessions, high stakes, and Berky destroyed him. Nick lost over $1 million in less than 60 hours of play, tried to slow down the game with long bathroom breaks, tried to save face with post-match spin, but by the end, he was wiped out, completely. Phil Galfond, one of poker's most respected voices, even stepped in as an intermediary when the two couldn't agree on basic terms. That's how childish it got. And when the dust settled, Nick admitted it. Berky was the better player. He paid the price, and for once, he shut up. The feud was settled, but not forgotten. Garrett Adelstein versus Robbie Jade Lou. Some poker rivalries are built on egos. This one was built on suspicion and a single hand that no one could explain. It happened on Hustler Casino Live, September 2022. Garrett Adelstein, one of the most respected high-stakes players in the game, faced off against Robbie Jade Lou, a relatively unknown amateur. The stakes were huge, the table was stacked, and then came the hand. Garrett had 8-7 of clubs, a combo draw. He triple-barreled. Robbie had Jack-4, no pair, no draw, just Jack high. She called a massive all-in, and somehow, she was good. The reaction was instant. Garrett froze. The commentators choked. No one could make sense of it. Why did she call? Was it a misread, a bluff gone wrong, or something worse? Garrett left the table. Later that night, he publicly accused Robbie of cheating. He said it didn't make sense. He felt something was off. Robbie denied everything. She said she misread her hand, called by mistake, but then it got weirder. She gave the money back, said it was to keep the peace. That gesture only made things worse. Twitter exploded. Pros picked sides. Hustler Casino launched an investigation. And for months, the poker world was split. Was she guilty, or did Garrett just lose his cool? No evidence ever proved cheating, but the damage was done. Garrett stopped playing live-streamed poker for a long time. Robbie stopped appearing on shows, and the poker community still hasn't agreed on what really happened. There was no rematch, no closure, just a single hand that changed everything. Tony G versus Phil Helmouth. If poker ever had a wrestling-style rivalry, this was it. Phil Helmouth, the emotional, self-proclaimed greatest of all time, and Tony G, the loud, ruthless trash talker from Lithuania who made it his mission to humiliate him. Every time they shared a table, the chaos was instant. On shows like The Big Game and High Stakes Poker, Tony G didn't just needle Phil, he dismantled him psychologically, and he did it with a smile. In one of their most famous clashes, Tony shoved all in blind, didn't look at his cards, didn't care. Helmouth called with ace-queen, thinking he had Tony crushed. Tony G flipped over queen, 4, and won. Then came the tirade. I played it like a setup. You're a terrible player. You're a disgrace to the game. Helmouth tried to respond, but Tony wasn't done. Get on your bike, go home, it's over. The phrase on your bike became poker slang overnight. A catchphrase, a meme, a dagger. Helmouth stormed off more than once. Tony never backed down, and fans couldn't get enough. It wasn't just about poker, it was theatre, and Tony G played the villain to perfection. Eventually, Tony stepped away from poker to enter European politics. Helmouth kept winning bracelets, and the rivalry, as loud as it was, quietly faded out. But the highlight reels are still there, and every time someone tilts, talks trash, or blows up on camera, you can thank Tony G for making it art. Daniel Negrronu versus Annie Duke. Back in the late 1990s, Daniel respected Annie. He even ranked her among the top 10 limit hold'em players in the world, placing her 6th. That's not nothing, especially coming from a guy grinding 5100 at the Bellagio. But that respect collapsed fast. According to Daniel, the very first time they met, Annie mocked him. He was 22, she was established, he carried a styrofoam cup. She called him Cup Boy in front of everyone. Daniel never forgot it. From that moment on, he said Annie represented everything he hated about poker: arrogance, elitism, and what he called a venomous presence. In 2002, things went public. Daniel posted a rant on a poker forum about an unnamed female player who was condescending and rude. Annie's brother, Howard Lederer, confirmed it was her, then fired back with an open letter accusing Daniel of chasing fame and bullying others for attention. Daniel's response was immediate and brutal. He went after Annie's behavior, her table etiquette, even her hygiene. He accused her of angle shooting, manipulating seat assignments, and reversing pot split agreements when they didn't go her way. He posted a full list of incidents. It wasn't just criticism, it was character assassination. Annie pushed back. She filed a complaint about Daniel's chat behavior on PokerStars. He got muted. He responded with an email so aggressive, Howard leaked it to the public, escalating things even further. And it only got worse. In 2010, Daniel dropped a C-bomb in an interview when talking about Annie. The backlash was massive. Even people who disliked Annie said he went too far. PokerStars defended him as an individual, but the damage was done. Later that year, Annie became commissioner of the Epic Poker League, a flashy new tour with big promises. Daniel wasn't buying it. He wrote a blog post titled "Why I Don't Play the EPL," accusing Annie of pushing a vanity project doomed to fail. He was right. The league collapsed, filed for bankruptcy, over $5 million in unpaid debts. Daniel mocked the fallout, another notch on his public takedown campaign. By the mid-2010s, Annie left poker altogether. Daniel toned things down, but never apologized. There was no final confrontation, no handshake, just silence. But for anyone who followed it, this wasn't just a feud, it was a 10-year war, and when it ended, there wasn't a winner, just two legacies, permanently stained by hate. Phil Helmouth versus Eric Pearson. By now, Phil Helmouth had seen it all. He'd berated amateurs, clashed with pros, and survived decades of meltdowns. But then came Eric Pearson, a casino mogul turned high-stakes wildcard. Pearson didn't just play aggressively, he talked trash like he was born for it, and he had zero interest in respecting poker royalty. The two clashed during PokerGo's No Gamble, No Future Cash game in 2022. Phil raised, Eric freebet, Phil called. The hand itself wasn't memorable, but the aftermath, legendary. As soon as Helmouth folded, Pearson unloaded. "Fucks you, Phil, you whiny little bitch." Dead serious, no smile, right into Helmouth's face. Pearson wasn't done. He kept leaning in, calling Phil weak, soft, predictable. It was like watching Tony G with a vengeance, but with even less of a filter. Helmouth tried to laugh it off, but the damage was done. He walked away rattled, and the poker world took sides. Was Pearson out of line? Or was he just saying what others had thought for years? There was no rematch, no resolution, but in one hand, Pearson did what few others ever could. He got inside the poker brat's head and crushed him in a heads up. Phil Helmouth versus Sam Grizzle. Most poker rivalries end at the table. This one ended in the parking lot.
Sam decked Phil. You gotta like Sam's chances in any fistfight, even though Phil's a lot bigger.
Sam Grizzle was everything Phil Helmouth wasn't. Short-tempered, sharp-tongued, and utterly unimpressed by Phil's poker resume. Where Helmouth threw tantrums, Grizzle delivered dry, cutting one-liners, and the two clashed like gasoline and fire. Their banter became legendary, their back and forths were constant. Sam calling Phil a crybaby, Phil calling Sam a nobody. It wasn't playful, it was real. But it reached a breaking point in the early 2000s when the two got into an argument at a poker room that spilled outside. According to multiple sources, including Phil himself, they started throwing punches. Neither walked away seriously hurt, but the story became poker folklore. The poker brat got into a fist fight, with the only guy in the room less diplomatic than him. Despite the violence, they still played together years later, and their verbal battles continued, just with a bit more caution. Sam Grizzle passed away in 2020. The Twitter feuds. In the old days, poker players settled their differences across the table. Now, they settle them in threads. Welcome to the modern battleground, Twitter. Trash talk has always been part of poker, but today it's broadcast in real time, uncensored and often unhinged. And no one fires off grenades quite like the pros. Doug Pulk, king of digital war, built an empire off roasting other players. He's called out Dan Bilzerian for being a fraud, labelled Bryn Kenny the cult leader of an alleged cheating ring, and once said Daniel Negrronu was on the Mount Rushmore of delusion. Sean Deeb isn't far behind. He's turned criticising other pros into a second career, feuding with everyone from Aliam Sirovic to Phil Galfond, even poking fun at Phil Helmouth's constant self-comparisons to Michael Jordan. Then there's Jungle Man, who took heat after firing off cryptic posts mid-drama, and Nick Airball, who basically live-tweeted his entire rivalry with Matt Berky, bathroom breaks and all. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's petty, sometimes it turns serious. Like when Poke accused Bryn Kenny of running a ghosting and collusion network, claims backed by a detailed interview with a whistleblower and still unresolved. Or when players accuse sites of rigged games, streamers of cheating, or each other of being washed or backed by shady money. And it's not just the words. These feuds have real-world consequences. Grudge matches, boycotts, investigations, lawsuits. Twitter gave poker players a megaphone, and they've used it to tear into each other. Day after day, character by character. It's toxic, it's transparent, and in some ways, it's the best free entertainment in poker. PokerStars versus GG Poker. In the early days of online poker, PokerStars was untouchable. It had the Sunday Million, the World Championship of online poker, and the biggest names in the game under its banner. But by the 2020s, a new contender had entered the ring, and it wasn't playing nice. GG Poker didn't just want a piece of the pie, it wanted the throne. This wasn't just a business rivalry, it was a culture clash. Tradition versus innovation, prestige versus chaos. GG Poker signed Daniel Negrronu, PokerStars' longtime ambassador, in what felt like a direct hit to the old guard. They launched wild new features, emotes, staking platforms, integrated bubble protection, flashy animations, and even banned third-party HUDs to make the game more fun. It was poker reimagined for the TikTok generation. Meanwhile, PokerStars held its ground with better software, deeper structures, and legacy credibility. But while they tightened rewards and trimmed down events, GG ramped up. They ran 50 million series against PokerStars' 20 million ones, scheduled bounty festivals on the same dates, flooded the space with influencers and streamers, and ate up market share one sign-up at a time. By 2021, GG Poker had surpassed PokerStars in global traffic. The unthinkable had happened. The king had been dethroned, and the war hasn't stopped. Both brands continue to lock horns over players, promotions, ambassadors, and bragging rights. Every time one site announces a new series, the other counters. It's a game of one-upmanship played out in prize pools and Twitch overlays. And for the players, it's a win. Because when two giants fight to outdo each other, the rest of the poker world eats well. World Series of Poker versus World Poker Tour. In the live poker world, two names stand above all others: the World Series of Poker and the World Poker Tour. One built its legacy on history, the other built its brand on TV, and for over 20 years, they've been locked in a subtle but unmistakable war for dominance. The World Series is the original king. Launched in 1970, it crowned legends, minted millionaires, and gave poker its most coveted prize, the main event bracelet. But in 2002, the World Poker Tour came swinging. With slick editing, whole card cams, and celebrity commentary, the WPT made poker feel like a sport. It didn't rely on tradition, it created drama, and viewers loved it. Suddenly, the World Series wasn't the only game in town. Both tours expanded, both signed pros, and both started jockeying for players, prestige, and calendar control. At first, they stayed in their lanes. World Series ruled the summer, WPT ran year-round. But as poker grew, so did the rivalry. In 2023, things got bolder. WPT announced its World Championship at the Wynn, a record-breaking event with nearly $30 million in prize money. World Series responded with something new. World Series Paradise in the Bahamas, running at the exact same time. Coincidence? Not likely. Each brand wants to own December. Each wants to be the final word on the poker calendar. And while they rarely attack each other publicly, make no mistake, this is a fight. For titles, for attention, and for the hearts of every player with a buy-in and a dream. The World Series has history. The WPT has momentum. And in a world where poker is global, there might not be room for both on top. Amarillo Slim versus Puggy Pearson. Before sponsorships, before Twitch streams, before ESPN, poker lived in smoky backrooms and long-haul road trips. And nobody lived that life louder than Amarillo Slim and Puggy Pearson. They were part of the original Texas Rounders, hustlers, gamblers, storytellers. Together with Doyle Brunson, they helped shape what the World Series of Poker would become. But Slim and Puggy weren't friends. Not really. They were rivals, not just on the felt, but off it. In 1972, Amarillo Slim won the World Series of Poker main event. He didn't just win, he took poker mainstream, talk show appearances, press tours, he even showed up on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and that infuriated Puggy. Puggy thought Slim was turning the game into a circus, selling out the honor of the road gambler lifestyle for TV fame and corny one-liners. Slim, of course, loved the spotlight. He once said, "I can outplay any man alive for stakes he can afford to lose." Puggy preferred to let his cards and his grudges do the talking. They clashed over everything: how the World Series should be run, who deserved credit for its growth, even who was the real ambassador of poker. And when Puggy won the main event the following year in 1973, he didn't go on a media tour. He didn't do interviews. He just let the win speak for itself. Over the years, they shared tables, but not respect. Their feud was part personal, part philosophical. Slim believed poker should be performed. Puggy believed poker should be earned. And somewhere between those two ideas, the modern game was born. Johnny Moss versus Nick the Greek Dandelos. Some rivalries are built on trash talk, some on money. This one, it built Las Vegas. In 1949, casino boss Benny Binion had a wild idea: put two of the greatest gamblers in the world in a public heads-up match, right in the middle of the Horseshoe Casino. The players: Johnny Moss, the quiet, stone-faced road gambler from Texas, and Nick, the Greek Dandelos, a flashy, fast-talking high roller from Chicago. Their duel lasted months, different games, day after day, night after night. Hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table. Crowds gathered around the rail like it was a heavyweight fight. Moss played slow, steady, surgical. Nick tried to crack him with pressure, with chatter, with sheer volume, but slowly, Moss bled him out. By the end, Nick had lost over $2 million in 1949 money, and all he said, in defeat, was, "Mr. Moss, I have to let you go." That line became poker legend, and the match itself, it inspired Benny Binion to create a new kind of tournament, a yearly spectacle to crown the best player in the world. We now know it as the World Series of Poker. No bracelets were awarded, no cameras were rolling, but Moss versus the Greek wasn't just a rivalry. It was the origin story of modern poker. Wild Bill Hickok versus Jack McCall. Poker has always flirted with danger, but no rivalry in the game's history ever ended like this. The year was 1876. The place, Deadwood, South Dakota, a lawless mining town where whiskey flowed, bullets flew, and poker was king. James Butler, Wild Bill Hickok, was already a legend, gunslinger, lawman, gambler. He walked into saloons with a pistol on each hip and a reputation that preceded him. Jack McCall was the opposite, a local drunk with a short fuse and no real poker pedigree. They sat down together in a saloon game. Bill took McCall's money, clean and fast. At the end, Hickok tossed him a coin and said, "Here, go buy yourself some breakfast." To Wild Bill, it was generosity. To McCall, it was humiliation. The next day, Hickok returned to the same table. He sat with his back to the door, something he never did. McCall walked in, pulled out a pistol, and shot Hickok in the back of the head. He died instantly, slumped over his cards. The hand he held, 2 aces and 2 eights, became known as the dead man's hand. McCall was eventually hanged, but his bullet didn't just kill a man, it birthed a legend and gave poker its most chilling tale. A reminder that in this game, rivalries don't always end with chips. Sometimes they end with blood. And speaking of poker wars, you've seen Daniel Negrronu bury his enemies one by one. But in his latest target, he takes aim at high-stakes poker itself, exposing what really happens behind the scenes of the biggest cash games on Earth. Click here to watch Negrronu versus the system and see why some games are rigged long before the cards are dealt.